12 minutes. No, it's not possible. Finish this in 12 minutes, frankly. Yeah. All right, thank you very much for having me here. Can you hear me in the back?
Yes, of course.
You guys seems already tired. Frankly. It's just like 1 hour, come on.
More than
You guys are looking, in Pakistan what actually happens, the speakers sometimes, not every time, but sometimes they ask the audience to, do sit-ups, stand up and sit down. So if people are feeling really tired, then, doing this kind of an activity for them up. Alright, so without wasting any time, let me quickly jump on to, it's a very complex kind of a paper. I have used perspectives from a variety of different disciplines and stitch them together to present a holistic view of what exactly is going on. It was very challenging to put this. I planned for a 20-minute presentation. I don't know. Now they're asking for like 12 minutes. I hope I'll be able to complete this in due time. So, all right. So to begin with, I'll just quote Einstein, who once said that we cannot solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Alright, by thinking here I also mean beliefs, ideas, mindsets, alright, all that kind of stuff. So if we agree with Einstein, then we must ask that which thinking or mindset or worldview has been responsible for bringing upon the sixth mass extinction, which if continued would eventually take humanity with it. According to an Australian think tank, human civilization could end by 2050 if no significant action is actually taken to stop this impending catastrophe. IPCC or Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change would not disagree, perhaps. Apparently, it seems like that it is the global industrialized system of production and consumption that is responsible for the rise in toxic elements like greenhouse gases and is gradually killing the planet's life support system. But to understand the root cause and fix the problem at its roots, we perhaps need to look at the very mindset logic or the fundamental set of ideas upon which the contemporary system of industrialized production and consumption is actually built. Alright, for that purpose, I have used the Hollingsworth method in this context, which provides a way to dig down to the core ideas at the foundation of a system. Right. Hollingsworth method suggests that a system is built on several layers, and peeling of a layer reveals the next layer. This can be done by asking questions regarding why something is happening on a particular layer, and subsequently exploration leads us to the next layer. This is done until the explorer reaches the core, which comprise of a set of assumptions, beliefs, values, ideas, or ontological, cosmological, teleological, epistemological, and axiological assumptions. After the underlying core, after identifying the core where the root cause of the systematic problem exists, we can replace the core with an alternative core and reconstruct an alternative system upon which the new core, which comprises of an alternative set of ideas actually built. Excuse me, the mouse is not working properly. So, if we talk about the first layer, so now if we begin the excavation using the Hollingsworth framework of institutional analysis. On the top most layer we have our global industrialized system of production and consumption, which is significantly responsible for poisoning the planet's life support systems. The system comprises of numerous multinational corporations. The primary goal of these corporations is not to satisfy the consumption needs of the population, but to maximize profits and shareholders' value. Providing for consumption is a means towards this goal. The multinational corporation operates on a global level because it allows them to reach the global population of consumers with enough purchasing power to source the raw materials from the cheapest sources. The corporations also externalize many of their costs on stakeholders, with least amount of bargaining power like the natural environment and cheap labor in third world countries. The primary goal of corporate owners is to maximize the return on their investment. But how do they know that their returns have been maximized? The answer to this question perhaps lies in the accounting techniques used by their managers. The existing system of accounting tells the managers that a business or a corporation is in profit only after excluding the cost of externality. For example, according to a report by UNESCO, many corporations would not be in profit if they only include the cost of repairing the damage they have done to the environment. Furthermore, much of the damage done to the world around is not visible in short terms, nor it is easily quantifiable, let alone measurable in pure monetary terms. So cost of acting irresponsibly toward the environment perhaps never finds a place on the income statement, let alone become visible to the corporations. So any interaction with the external world is not accounted as a transaction whose impact on the corporation is not visible in short term and which cannot be measured in pure monetary terms. A transaction, however, is an activity of exchange. Breathing, for example, is an activity where we exchange oxygen with CO2. Likewise, business takes something from the natural environment and gives something back to it. Exchange with stakeholders who cannot lay a claim of the damage done to them is never accounted in firm's balance sheet or income statement. The natural environment and poor communities in third world countries are perhaps the most common example of most frequently affected stakeholders. So accounting practices used by the corporations perhaps condition the managers to think only in one dimensions of monetary returns and limit their vision to quarterly and annual targets. One-dimensional mindset, short-sightedness of managers do not typically allow the managers of corporations to see that the damage they are doing to the environment can in turn also damage their own selves and the future of their children and even the future of the corporate entity they work for. The very idea of what goes around comes around is perhaps foreign to their worldview. In other words, their worldview does not easily accept the concept of circularity of their interaction with the world. One may ask now, why the managers in general have such a limited one-dimensional view of the interaction they do with the world around them? The answer perhaps lies in how knowledge is produced and expanded in modern industrialized world. Knowledge in modern industrialized society evolves in compartments or specializations which are often isolated and often compete with each other. In markets, and often compete with each other in the market in terms of their profit maximizing capacity. The solutions of problems created by each specialization of knowledge can have side effects. These side effects often become problems to be solved by other specializations, which in turn leads to more side effects as none of the specialization have the capacity to see how the proposed solution would affect others in every possible manner, particularly in the long run. So the specialized solutions of problems lead to new problems, which lead to new specialized solutions, which eventually leads to more problems, so on, so forth. Modern specialists in most fields are therefore conditioned to be short-sighted and motivated by commercialization potential of short-term problem solving, which eventually has long-term side effects. So the excavation from the system of production to the system of knowledge in the modern industrialized society hints toward the very idea on which the system is built. These ideas are, number one, the modern man or woman is perhaps considered a being of highest order, self-interested, short-sighted, self-righteous, a being who considers himself to have the right to exploit every lesser being for the sake of his or her self-interest. Number two, the world around him is meant to be exploited to serve for his self-interest. Knowledge is meant to enable the modern man in the process of exploitation of the natural order and quantitatively measure its progress in the process of exploitation. Knowledge in the modern industrialized world is meant to be continuously evolving as new problems keep emerging from old short-term specialized solutions. So the new solutions are always needed, and development of new solutions keep the body of modern knowledge perpetually expanding. So the ideas about the nature of man, nature of world, and nature of knowledge, which are at the core of modern industrialized society, which have their own historicity, needs to be replaced with the ideas which do not lead to the destruction, rather preservation of our life support systems. No surprise, Islam gives us an alternative set of ideas about the role of man or a woman has to play in this world. Islam tells its followers about the kind of relation they ought to have with the world and from where they should seek the guidance to rightfully interact with the world around them. In Islamic worldview, Muslims are supposed to act as caretakers. The world is a medium through which their Creator provides for the sustenance needs and is meant to be taken care of. To guide them in the process of interacting with the world, they have been provided the guidance in the form of Quran and Hadith. So now if we retrace our steps, Islam's worldview, Quran and Hadith would naturally be at the center of the body of knowledge produced by a Muslim society. Quran and Hadith would provide the guiding principles to work out solutions to problems emerging in every domain of society established in the principles of Islam. In Islam's worldview, domains of life are not isolated, rather an interconnected part of a single whole. Disturbance in one domain of life can influence other domains as well. For example, haram income may make one's children disobedient. So for a Muslim, what goes around does come around either in this world or on the Day of Judgment. The idea of circularity is therefore built into the very worldview of a Muslim. This implies that every action of a Muslim is a transaction, but the returns are not often quantifiable. The returns may be in the form of internal satisfaction, barakah in income, improved social ties, better health or reward on the Day of Judgment. So from an Islamic perspective, outcome of each transaction, even economic transactions, shall not be evaluated exclusively in monetary terms. A Muslim trader who takes care of his stakeholders, remain honest, honor commitments, do ihsan on his labor, will not just develop goodwill, but may also earn salvation on the Day of Judgment. Since it is not always possible for an ordinary Muslim to follow